Hey, what is going on, everybody? Welcome to episode 57 of the X Button Gaming Podcast. As you can tell, the intro was a little bit different this time because we're going to get a little bit naughty here.
A little funky.
I don't know why, when I started talking, I thought of the Benjamin Franklin from The Office, where where he talks, when he says that, and again, sometimes I can be a little bit naughty. Anyway, now I'm just getting... That was totally unnecessary. Anyway, so yeah, different intro. That was done by my good friend Alex here. It was a very special treat to get ready for a very special episode.
Yeah.
At this point, I believe anybody who's listened to probably more than one episode of the podcast will know that I'm a pretty big fan of a certain game called Toejam and Earl, to the point where certain people have told me to shut up about it.
And you will never shut up.
And I refuse.
Never
you can't
surrender.
Preach the word. That's what I say. Preach the word of TJ&E. I don't even know. Anyway, but yeah, it's been a long time coming. I know a lot of the people that listen to the podcast have never actually had a chance to play the games before and probably wonder why I'm even talking about them so much, why I even like them, and that's what we're going to kind of talk about here in a bit. Talk about the series and why I like it, give some information on it, and yada, yada, yada. And Alex joined me here to do it.
Because he made me.
I forced him. There was a gun, and it shot tomatoes. Tomato launcher. Anyway, thanks for joining me, man.
You're welcome.
So before we get started into the main topic, why don't we talk about...
What you been playing?
That's right, we're going to talk about what we've been playing, or what you've been playing first. So Alex, what have you been playing?
I'll say what I've been finishing.
Oh, you
is
finished.
Tears of the Kingdom.
You find... Oh,
Finally finished it.
almost a year later, you're done. Everything's done. All the Korok seeds, everything.
Every single thing I wanted to do.
Okay. Much more reasonable.
I mean, there are still things to do. I'm not going to finish the Korok seeds because you still get just a piece of poop as a prize.
Well, and if there's no trophy, what's the point even?
Well, I mean, there's a... not a digital trophy,
Okay,
but...
no achievements is what I meant.
Someday.
Someday. Here's to hoping.
Yeah. But, yeah, still good. It's still a good game after... I don't know how many hours I played, but...
That'd be funny if after the 200 hours you put in, you're like, this game sucks.
This game wasn't that good.
Why did I do this to myself? So, almost a year later, we'll say, I don't know how many hours you played, but I'm going to say 200.
At least, yeah.
200 plus hours. You like it more than Breath of the Wild?
I think so. Yeah,
you
but just
think so?
marginally better.
Okay.
Just because of how they added, the tiers, the TIERS.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Those tiers. So many layers.
Yes. Like an onion.
Shrek should be mentioned every episode.
But Breath of the Wild was still, because it's the first of the two games, it's still, I don't know. You have to raise it up just because it was the first, kind of.
Yeah. It did everything just about perfectly on its first try. So
exactly.
It's hard to... And then there will also be the memories... that sounds funny. Be the memories of it, too, when you played it. I mean, it was a launch title for the Switch. And at this point, the Switch is kind of, iconic and revolutionary in our minds.
Long in the tooth, yeah.
And it's definitely long in the tooth. But so many people have such fond memories of the Switch now and, love it so much. Like, for that to have been... If you bought a Switch in the first year, that was probably your first game. And even after, it was probably still a lot of people's first game.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I get where you're coming from with that. So if in 3 years you wanted to go back and play one in that universe, Zelda in that universe again, would you go back to Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom first?
I think Tears, just maybe because to finish the things I haven't touched yet.
Okay. So you wouldn't start over? You just...
If they added a Master Quest, I'd start over.
Okay.
Because they added that in the DLC I think it was DLC for Breath of the Wild.
It was. I don't remember if it was paid or... I think it was paid DLC.
Yeah.
But I think they've said they're not doing DLC for
That's
Tears
what
of
I've heard
Kingdom,
too.
But
yep.
You never know.
Good for me.
People lie.
Good for me to play other games.
It's good for your time.
Yeah.
Yeah, dude, you put a lot of time into that. So, since you finished it, have you had time to start something else, or was that recently you finished it?
Yeah, I played a few other games just to, pass some time.
Some palate cleansers?
Yeah. Speaking of Palette Town, Pokemon.
We don't talk about Pokemon here.
I finished the Pokemon trading card game on the Game Boy.
Yeah, the game. Did you like it?
Yeah.
I had that game when I was a kid, and I loved it because the RPG feel of it, along with the actual I know this is weird, but it made other TCG video games kind of pale in comparison
Really?
for a while, which I didn't play any of the Yu-Gi-Ohs, but I was a huge Dragon Ball Z fan, obviously still am, and I got the Dragon Ball Z card game.
You thinking that'd be
that was on Game
similar?
Boy Advance. I thought it would be similar, but it's all it is basically static screens where, you know, two characters will talk to each other and then you play. You still do the deck building and stuff, so that was fun.
I see.
Because I collected that card game too, but it didn't have the RPG elements.
Yep.
And I thought those were super cool.
Yeah, it was a nice short game, but I'm not a. I played the game a long time ago when it first came out, the original actual physical card game.
Yeah.
And so I learned a little bit how to play there, and I've played at PAX recently to get some
that's right, the
booster
pins.
packs and get the pins. But as far as like how to play the game, wasn't in the know of that, so the learning curve was actually pretty strong of not just how to play, but how to play effectively.
Now take that knowledge and go play with the modern cards.
Yeah. Well, I learned two things: Rain Dance deck and the Haymaker deck.
Those were the names of the decks in the game?
Not in the game. They're fan made.
Oh, okay.
The Rain Dance is you get like a few Squirtles, some Blastoises, some Wartortles, and then Articuno, and then you just have a bunch of rain energy cards, and get to Blastoise where you can bring in energy cards for free, and you just mow over the competition. Like, it doesn't matter what they are, what's on the table. Eventually, they'll wear down from all the power you have.
Unlimited power.
And then the Haymaker deck is it's like Electabuzz, Scyther, and Hitmonchan, and they're all used because they're first level Pokemon. You don't have to evolve them, and they hit pretty hard right at the beginning. And so you just overwhelm the opponent from the beginning like that. Oh. But to keep them from powering up their Pokemon at all.
Yeah. So you built those decks in the game?
I built variations of them because you can't get all the cards, or it's really hard to get all the cards for the decks.
Do you have to trade with somebody else to complete like the
I think
card
so.
decks?
If I was to actually complete the decks, I think you have to trade, or at least I think there is some trading involved with that.
That it makes sense. I had never thought about it. But so overall, good experience then?
Yeah, it was fun. Yep.
And they have like it's a variation of gyms in it, right? Like where you go and do your deck battles instead of Pokemon battles.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a really cool concept. I wish they would do something like that again with like a modern day Pokemon trading card game.
Yep.
I doubt they will, but
they have the digital card game, right?
Yeah, it's just not. I mean, you're playing other people, which is fun, I'm sure, but I know like James and Jordan really like it, but it wasn't really for me. I like more linear. I like story and
PvE.
Yeah,
player versus environment.
Making a deck to beat an enemy that's probably going to lose to me anyway because they're not even that smart.
Yep.
I don't want to play against real people. They beat me.
It's always disappointing.
Well, that's cool. Have you been playing anything else?
I'm trying to think. I played, and also in the Game Boy line, I went back to an old game I've played before, which is the Mario Golf game. And it's fun because even back then when I was a kid playing the game, I would, try to get the best score possible on each course at the first time. And so I would just save before each hole, not like each hole of the course.
See, I got the best score on my first try.
And just if I did a bad shot, then I'd restart the game and start over on that same hole.
Cheater.
Yep. And so I'm for time purposes, I'm doing that now but now I'll be able to rewind and go back to each
much quicker
individual shot. Yeah. Yep. So I can cheat more effectively.
Now, did that game have the RPG elements too? Because it was made by Camelot, right?
Yep.
Who later went on to make
Golden Sun.
Yep.
Yeah. Which is an RPG.
Yeah, it is.
With no golf in it.
Nope. What were they even doing anymore?
Don't know.
Where's the golf? So have you finished that, or you just kind of started it?
No, I started it and then was playing it and forgot to save, and then my Switch turned off, and so I don't.
You lost progress.
I lost progress, and I don't need to go back. So
yeah,
I've got other
games. A fun little thing to do for a few minutes.
Yep,
that's kind of what a lot of those games are to me. Now, some of them last a lot longer, but like that was, I think, a few months ago. I played Kirby's Dream Land 2.
It was,
and yeah, it was. I mean, I ended up finishing. It was just such a quick playthrough.
Yeah,
but
what about you?
I haven't been playing too much period.
Terribly.
Terribly. I haven't been playing too much until recently. Once I finished Rebirth, I kind of took a little bit of a gaming break. Not so much because I didn't feel like playing as much as it was such like a big. So Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, it was such a big epic experience that afterwards it was kind of hard for anything to like, I don't know, live up. It wasn't like things needed to live up to it, but it was hard to like. I just had my mind blown a little bit, and then I was trying to go back, and I was just like, I couldn't get into anything. So for the most part, I really didn't play much for probably 2 weeks after I played it or finished it. But then Ayuden Chronicles 100 Heroes came in the mail, and that was a game that I backed on Kickstarter back in 2020.
Nice.
And what it is, for anybody who isn't familiar, is it is made by some of the original creators of the Suikoden series from PS1 and PS2. They basically put this Kickstarter together because they wanted to make a spiritual successor, because obviously they don't have the rights to Suikoden, stolen by Konami. But yeah, they wanted to make a spiritual successor that had a lot of the same, not vibes, but a lot of the same ideas and like things that they did. Like in Suikoden, one of the popular things is the 108 Stars of Destiny, where you gather together 108 characters to get the true ending on the game. They also,
a lot of characters.
It is a lot of characters, but it's usually a lot of the conversations are like, "Hey, what are you doing? You want to come to my castle?"
Okay.
Yeah. That's what some of them are just super simple like that, and then there's obviously the more in-depth ones. But I loved that series. It was one of my favorite RPG series. It's actually what got me into collecting was when after I played. I've talked about this a little bit on the podcast in the past, but after I played Suikoden 4, I loved it and was like, okay, I'm playing the fourth one. I need to go play the rest of them. And at the time, Suikoden 2 was worth like $100, and I was like, what the heck? Like, I don't think I really realized that games were gonna had that much value to them.
Yeah.
So then that had me. It was just, long story short, it became a big thing. But I love the series. I played through the first 5 games multiple times over the years. So when they announced this Kickstarter, it was a no-brainer for me. I backed it so I backed the tier where I got a physical copy of it, and then it came last week. About a week ago today, maybe even a little before that, and which the game officially launched 2 days ago as of this recording.
Wow. So
I got it a little bit early, which was cool.
You could post a review about it, or you could have.
I'm already past that. I didn't play enough quickly enough, because it did still like. It was, once the day it came, I was still a little bit like, I don't want to get into another RPG right now. Like, Rebirth was a long game. I mean, I played it a lot, so, and all in a good way. But it's nice to play small games too here and there. But I was like, I want to play it now. Like, I'd rather get into it. And luckily, sometimes RPGs don't, no matter how much you want to play them, don't grab right away. And it's just not, more than any other genre, I find that RPGs sometimes it's just not the right time to play them.
Yeah.
Luckily, this actually did grab me pretty quickly. Probably within the first hour, I was kind of feeling it. I was getting the vibes of the Suikoden vibes again. And then as soon as basically your first real quest after the prologue is like, we need to get some more people to help with the cause type thing. And as soon as I was doing that, it felt like I was playing a Suikoden game. The story was good. The voice acting is good. The music is good. The game looks great.
Nice.
It is very reminiscent of the PS1 era RPGs.
Like art style too, or just
because
gameplay?
Obviously it looks like it's HD high res, but it has a lot of PS1 RPGs had static backgrounds, or hand drawn. It's kind of like this like a combination of the two, where it's like it has like, I'm not even gonna try to explain it. I'll sound stupid, but it's those 3D kind of like staticky backgrounds, but then with hand drawn sprite characters that move along. Which obviously was PS1 tended to be a little bit more on the 3D side with their sprites, but this is definitely hand drawn, which the Suikoden games always were.
That's cool.
It looks really nice, and I've been pleasantly surprised with the voice acting, because JRPGs, especially English voice acting, can be very hit or miss. No matter how much you love the game, sometimes the voice acting will drive you nuts. And it's actually really good. So
nice. So as a spiritual successor, do you feel like it hits that scratches that itch for Suikoden itself? Like, if Suikoden Rebirth birth came out.
That's what Suikoden 2 was.
And it was the same game as what you just played. How would you feel?
It would be. I think they did a good job.
Okay.
It's obvious that these are some of the same people that worked on
Yeah.
the old games because the vibe is very similar. Even the storyline has a lot of the same, like, kind of generic-y type, like character. Like, they're good characters, but it is a little bit, the plucky hero who just, will do anything to protect his friends, and, the torn bad guy who doesn't know if he wants to be good or bad, kind of stuff like that. But it has, the Suikoden games had that, they were friends and now they're divided by this war type thing. But it definitely feels like if they took the Ayuden Chronicles name away and put Suikoden on it, it would be a Suikoden game.
Yeah, is it like Final Fantasy where the characters can change, the realm can change, and it's just the name on the cover?
So the Suikoden games were more connected than that, but none of them, with the exceptions of, that's not totally true, but for the most part, each game was new lead characters. Mm-hmm. So, and then there were some characters that made crossover appearances that would be part of the stars in that game too. But I think you could play any one of them individually and not have needed to play the first one. Okay. Like, I started with the fourth one, but the fourth one was also like a prequel. It took place the furthest ahead in the timeline. Yeah. So it didn't. There was a few things that you don't, characters that actually make appearances in both that you don't know unless you played the later entries, or the newer and older entries. But
how would you rate this one compared to all the Suikoden games?
I mean, I'm not super far. I'm about 15 hours in right now. So it's hard to say for sure. This is a series, the Suikoden series for me is definitely one that it's hard to rate until you're done with it. Because there's a lot that happens and, you kind of grow attachments to different characters and stuff. And I've only kind of scratched the surface right now. I would say it feels like it will, 2 and 5 are my two favorite of the Suikoden games. I feel like it's probably just below those currently. Okay. Like, I can tell that I'll probably like it more than 3 or 4. Because even though they're both good, they were always the lower on my list of the ones I liked the most. One is, I have a lot of fondness for one because it had that old feel to it. It was an early PS1 RPG and it felt it, but it was still, had a lot of charm.
Yep. And it probably felt, maybe not revolutionary, but, iconic at least.
Yeah, it was. I mean, I played it way later. I don't think I played any of the Suikoden games until mid-2000s, like 4 or 5. Okay. But there's certain RPGs that really, like, hit home with me for different reasons. Final Fantasy VII was one of them. Like, I'd never played anything like that at the time. And then Suikoden was another one because I already loved Pokemon, and collecting Pokemon was a thing. And in this, you're kind of collecting people a little bit, but it's different because you the more you gather, the bigger your home base infrastructure gets, and the more shops and different things open up, and it feels like this hub that you helped create.
That's cool.
And I really loved that feeling.
And every person in the town or whatever, the hub is someone that you've met.
Somebody that you brought there.
That's cool.
Almost all of them directly, some indirectly because of another character that you brought there, but it was just, I don't know. Well, the first time I played it, I just loved that concept so much. Plus, the stories are so good that it was just, I don't know. They always resonated really, really strongly with me. I do think it's one of the most underappreciated RPG series. Like, obviously, I know a lot of other RPG fans that like it, but so many people, whether they be slightly more casual RPG fans or fans that have come to the genre much later, have never played them. And granted, they're kind of hard to get your hands on, and they're not very easily accessible on modern consoles anywhere. I don't even know if you can download them on PlayStation or anything. But they are working on a Suikoden 1 and 2 like remaster. It was announced a couple of years ago. Okay. And I think it's supposed to come to America. It's been very quiet for a long time, but if it ever eventually comes out and you can play it in English, I highly recommend anybody who likes RPGs play them, because especially the second one it's a 10 out of 10. Like, it's that good, and you can hold me to that. If you like RPGs. If you don't like RPGs, that's on you. You shouldn't have bought it. I'm not telling you to play it if you don't like RPGs.
I put the game in and I had to read.
Why? Yeah, no, they're definitely RPGs. Lots of reading. Lots of story. And that's the thing. Like, RPGs just aren't for everybody. And I understand that. But they are for me. What's your favorite RPG, Alex? Do you know?
Ever?
Yeah. I know you've played a handful over the years.
Oh, I don't know. I don't think I could think of like all the ones I played on the spot just to rate them all.
I want you to think this is going to be a 5-hour long podcast where you think of everyone you've ever played.
Every single one. What qualifies as an RPG?
Just say Golden Sun and we'll move on.
Golden Sun 2,
Yeah.
Lost Age.
Yeah, no, I know you've played those. I mean, what qualifies, and that's very,
Yeah.
it's nowadays a lot of things. They consider Assassin's Creed an RPG in some,
that's
some
not.
farms, but
Yeah.
yeah, I was talking more directly like JRPG.
Exactly, yeah.
But-
no, turn-based. I don't know. I'd have to go back and think. I'll think about it, and then at the end of the episode.
Okay. Pay no more attention to what happens the rest of the episode. Just focus on answering that.
Yes.
Yeah, but that's basically it for what I've been playing. Like I said, it just was like not a lot of. It just I don't know. I've been busy too. Work's been really busy, so it wasn't like my time has been a little tighter, I guess. I did go to a concert on Friday night.
Whoa.
So
a real live concert.
a real live concert,
Not
real
Fortnite.
live. Oh, those don't count. No, not a Fortnite concert. So I've only been to a couple concerts in the last handful of years. But yeah, me and my friend Kel, we went and saw Sim in concert.
Sims. Yeah.
The Sims. It's a live performance in similes of. No, but they're a Japanese metal band.
Oh, that sounds cool.
So yeah, and I mean I'm not like a metal guy. Like obviously I like some 80s metal. But like I would never say like, oh yeah, I'm super into metal. But the reason I was even familiar with them, and they made a joke about this during their concert because they speak, even though they're Japanese, they spoke pretty good English. Is because of Attack on Titan. They did 2 of the theme songs for Attack on Titan.
I remember that on your story now.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
I did post it on my story, but yeah. So like, it was a great concert. They had 3 opening bands. And the first 2 were very much so. And this, for people who are a fan of it, this is probably an ignorant comment because I don't really know much about the genre, but they were much more like screamo type. And I was like, I can't understand what's happening. I don't understand what's happening right now. Like,
Was it in Japanese? Or
no,
was it...
these were one of them was from one of the other groups was from Japan too. But no, I couldn't understand them because I just couldn't understand what they were saying.
Yeah,
because they were definitely singing in English. But I was like, they were very talented though. Like first off, how somebody can do that with their throat and their voice for so long is mind blowing. I've tried to scream along to a song for a little bit and I'm like done by the end of a verse. But yeah, that was mind blowing. And they're very talented. Like some of the music itself was just really good. The third band was a little bit more of a mix. They reminded me a little bit more of like Linkin Park, where he had, Chester had some like loud, like screamy parts, but it was definitely more just rock.
Yeah.
But then yeah, Sim was the main band, was the main act.
The headliner?
The headliner, there we go. And yeah, they phenomenal. Put on such a great show, and they're like the energy was insane. Like they have so much energy. The guitarist was like literally dancing and jumping around the whole time.
That's pretty cool.
He did not stop. Like he was constantly like, what was the thing that the dude from AC/DC used to do where he
he'd like run, like do the Homer Simpson on the floor, except that was before Homer Simpson.
Yeah, basically he was doing stuff like that, like but nonstop. But he did make a joke at one point because he was like, "This is our first headlining concert in the U.S. Like, what? Where'd you all hear about us?" And he's waiting, and he's like, "Attack on Titan, really?" But he's just joking. He's like, "Hey, I love Attack on Titan." But yeah, it was fun. It was a nice change of pace. I feel like it's been a lot of just work. So going to a concert was fun.
Yeah.
All right, but let's go ahead and move in to the main topic. Sometimes it feels so quick because we used to do news, but I haven't done that in a while.
No news.
No news is good news. That's actually probably not true in the video game world, but there probably is news. We're just not talking about it. So anyway, as I mentioned a little bit at the beginning, this episode is going to be this episode's going to be about Toejam and Earl. So I've talked about it a little bit, but as anybody who's listened to the podcast knows, I'm a huge fan of the series. It's one of my favorites from going back all the way to basically, like, I don't know, like kindergarten age, like 5-6 years old. So early 90s. It's always been one of my go-tos. And trying to think of how to word this next part. So with growing up, I was a Nintendo kid. My parents had an NES before I was born. My sisters did, I guess. And then, when I was really young, we got a Super Nintendo, and I loved Mario, and like that's what I had. But as you might know, I mean, in the 90s, almost nobody had both consoles.
Right? Yeah.
You either had a Nintendo or a Sega. The exceptions were probably if maybe it was an adult who gamed, whether they had kids or not. Maybe they had both.
Yep. Or if you had an uncle at Sega and Nintendo.
That uncle cloned himself and he was awesome. But yeah, no, everybody had one or the other. It was super uncommon to know somebody who had both. So I had a Nintendo. I loved, the games I had, but I always longed for Sega. The commercials,
The superior console.
I mean, in a lot of ways, people will fight you on that. I go back and forth because Super Nintendo has my RPGs, but Sega has my Toejam and Earl and Sonic.
Right.
But like I said, like I had a Super Nintendo. I loved the games that came out on it. I loved my Marios. Later on, I loved my RPGs. But I would get up every morning and watch the Sonic the Hedgehog cartoon. I loved that cartoon. I loved Sonic the Hedgehog. Like I wanted a Genesis so bad because I wanted Sonic the Hedgehog as a kid. I watched the cartoon. I read the comics. It was, and then the commercials too. Like I don't remember vividly the commercials, but I remember the commercials making me want like Sega stuff even more
because they were it was the cool system.
100%.
Yep.
You weren't cool if you didn't have Sega, and I felt like I wasn't cool. But I didn't have a Genesis. Did you have a Genesis growing up?
I didn't personally. I didn't have either one growing up, but in my house. But since I had cousins, we had access to each other playing both the NES, SNES, and the Genesis.
That helps.
Yeah.
Having family helps. I had none. So, that's a lot of ways. The only way you could play both is if you knew somebody else who had both, whether it be family or friends. And for me, obviously, like I said, I had Nintendo. Like my friend James, they had a Super Nintendo, but his family, but my friend Nick and Mark, my friends Nick and Mark, they had a Genesis. I don't think I knew anybody else that had a Genesis other than them. But I remember, we became friends probably about the time I was like 5 or 6. So it's been a long time. And I remember going over there, and it wasn't the first time I went over, we played Space Quest on PC, which is still one of my favorite games. I remember that. But it wasn't long after that, we ended up playing Sonic the Hedgehog 2, which I, have a lot of fondness for. But that Sonic 2 was not a great 2-player game, as you probably know.
Which we're going to talk about a little bit, I think.
Yeah, but Toejam and Earl was.
Yes. Well, we're talking about it now.
Yeah. And that's exactly what it was, is like...
Co-op.
There were other co-op games. And Sonic had co-op, but it was, barely. Sonic won.
Yeah.
Like, if you were Tails, you were kind of screwed.
Yeah. You get left behind and then have to wait for your character to show up on the screen.
Exactly. You didn't get to do much. Then there's like the X-Men game on Genesis. That was fun. You at least both got to play at the same time, but it was a little more standard co-op fare.
Yep.
The first time we played Toejam and Earl, I remember they didn't even own it yet. They ended up borrowing it from somebody. And I remember the first time I played it, they'd already played it, but my mind was blown by this game. As a kid, there was nothing else like it. And that's what we're going to kind of get into. We're going to talk a little bit about each game. Most about the first one and the most recent one, but we'll talk a little bit about the two in between as well. But the first game is easily the one that, I have fond memories of each of them, at least a little bit, but it's the one that brought me in.
Yeah.
100%.
Yes.
So Alex, when was the first time you played Toejam and Earl?
It would have been at my cousin's house, my cousin Tyler. He had it, and so we would play. So it must have been not long after it came out. So when did it come out? Like 90?
Oh, I should have written that down. I want to say it was earlier than I think it was 91.
91?
I literally have the game on the table here. I think it was 91. Alex is verifying me because I should have verified that already.
See. Patents, U.S. numbers, 4,442,000. No, I don't know. It doesn't say on the box itself, but early 90s.
Well, you know it does. That's Google. 91.
91. Hey, there we go. So I had to be probably I probably had to been like 8 or so. So maybe got to it maybe by 93, which in game terms back then was pretty recent, like
Yeah.
not long after it came out.
Exactly, because you only got 1 or 2 games a year.
Yep. And didn't have 1,000 games coming out each year.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the thing. Oh, for sure, there wasn't as many coming out, but like nowadays, if I mean, and this isn't even meant to be an insult, but a kid nowadays, if they have an Xbox or a Steam account or a Nintendo or a Switch or a PlayStation, they have access to hundreds of games for a monthly fee, $15 a month or whatever. We didn't have that when we were kids. So, we got the few games a year that we got. So that's one of the things that made Toejam and Earl so special was so many games. You'd play it once and you beat it, and then you go back and play it again because you didn't have many games. And
Yeah.
and you may have enjoyed it, but it was the same game each time. Toejam and Earl was different. So to get into it a little bit, one of the coolest things about Toejam and Earl is it was, at the time I didn't realize this. I didn't realize this until much more recently, but it was probably the earliest roguelike game that I've ever played.
Yeah.
Because I didn't even know that was a thing.
It was before it probably had a real name.
There was a game on the PC called Rogue.
Yes.
That I know that's
but
what it was based
the term
off of.
roguelike or roguelite
I don't think it was a thing yet. It might have been, but
Maybe.
I doubt it. But yeah, that was an unheard of concept to me. And basically what that is once you start over, you play it again with a different, with some things carrying over, but a reason to go back to it because things change.
The map changes.
The map changes, yeah.
And where things are on the map, of course, changes as well.
Exactly. And that's what made Toejam and Earl so special. And one of the things that made it so special.
Yep. But with the co-op too, the fact that you could play your character totally separate from the other character.
Yeah. It was
Yeah.
I can't think of another game that did that. Nowadays it's common. You play an MMO, you're playing with your friends in multiple different places, or shooters or whatever else. You don't have to be right next to each other.
Right.
But at the time, like I mentioned, the X-Men game on Sega Genesis, you had to be in the same length of the screen. You couldn't travel apart from each other. Or more commonly, a lot of co-op games like Mario, it wasn't more common actually, but commonly, like a lot of games like the Mario games, you took turns playing.
Yeah.
You weren't actually playing together. But
more competitive.
yeah, exactly. But Toejam and Earl, you had to work together. And just to loop back a little bit, there was 2 types of gameplay you could do. You could do a fixed playthrough where everything was the same. The presents were the same, the levels were the same layout, the ship pieces were the same on each level, or at the same places throughout the 25 levels. Or you could do a random world. And that is kind of what we were talking about. In a random playthrough, the level designs changed, where the ship pieces would spawn changed, the presents changed, they would be in a different box every time, and it made for a completely, maybe not completely, but a mostly unique gameplay experience every time. So for kids who only got a new game, 1 or 2 new games a year max, this was a game that we could keep going back to and keep having a new experience. And I can't say it enough. I loved it.
Yeah.
And I didn't have a Genesis. I'd only play it when I'd go over to my friend Nick's house. But man, it was truly, truly amazing.
And the music.
Oh, the music. Yeah. The music was, like you heard in the opening, it so heavily inspired by like funk and hip hop.
Hopefully at least a few of you were bumping your butts during it.
Hopefully you're bumping like a frog. But yeah, it's some of my favorite music, and it definitely, I don't know that I can outwardly say it inspired my musical tastes growing up, but I've always leaned heavily towards like hip hop and R&B in what I listen to music wise. And
true.
It is kind of convenient that one of my earliest like video game soundtracks that I loved was Toejam and Earl. So I don't know. I can't say for a fact that it had something to do with it, but it sure feels like it did. But yeah, everything about it, and including and especially the main characters, Toejam and Earl, because they had a certain je ne sais quoi. No. They just, they were cool aliens that crash landed on Earth, and they had all of that hip hop attitude that was so popular in the 90s. And they had these, when you played co-op, they had all these funny quips that they'd say to each other when you separated on the map and then came back together, they'd say things, or in the elevator between levels, they'd say things. And it just made for such a fun experience.
Yeah, unique. That's
Very unique.
there was no other game like it.
No, not at all. So just to talk a little bit more about some of the details of Toejam and Earl and what, continued to make the series kind of shine. Like we talked about the music, the characters, the randomized levels really made a huge difference. But then there was other things too. When you travel between levels, so the main goal in Toejam and Earl was that you crash landed and you need to find your ship pieces to rebuild your ship to get off the planet. That's how you beat the game. So we'll just say in a randomized world playthrough, each level you go through at the beginning, it'll tell you if there's a ship piece on that level. If there's not, it won't say anything. So your goal is to either A, just do what you can to find the exit or the elevator to move on to the next level, or B, find the ship piece so that you can get one step closer to finishing your ship, and then find the elevator to move on to the next level. And while you're doing that, you're also picking up presents that are lying around that will have different either power-ups, or we'll just use the term power downs for now. And you're also trying to avoid the bad Earthlings and maybe take advantage of some of the helpful good Earthlings, giving you some helpful help.
Very concise.
As you play. And so the presents were probably one of the most unique and fun aspects of the game, because in a fixed playthrough, like I said, everything was the same every time. But in a random playthrough, you were really testing your luck when you're opening presents sometimes.
Because each present, you don't know what it does until you open it.
Yeah, it's just question marks. So there's two ways that you can do this. One, you open it and you gamble. You just hope it's something good.
Yep.
Or you can find the wise carrot man, who he's like a bearded older white man. I meant wise man. He's white, but wise man that wears a carrot costume.
Yeah, naturally.
Naturally, why wouldn't he? That's what Earthlings do. And you could pay him some fee to
$1 usually.
I think it was $1, yeah, and he'd reveal a present for you. So a lot of times that's what I would use my money on, was to try to reveal all the presents, because there was the good items that you want. Like there was some of the best ones were like extra bucks, which would just give you more extra money to spend, extra life, which obviously would give you an extra life, promotion, which we'll get to in a little bit, or other useful items like the Icarus wings would give you the ability to fly, or rocket skates, which were basically what they sound like, rocket skates, so you moved exceptionally fast across the land. So those were just some of the good ones, and there were a lot more good presents than bad presents. But some of the bad ones that you didn't want to get were like the rotten food, because if you're almost dead and you opened rotten food, it would finish the job. You would eat it and you would die, and if you're out of lives, that would really suck. But the two worst ones, these are the ones you never wanted, especially in a randomized playthrough. Total bummer, which always sucked because it just immediately killed you. But this was even worse, in my opinion, and that's the randomizer. You open the randomizer, doesn't matter if you've identified every other present in the game, it randomizes them again. And in a random playthrough, it makes them completely different. So you can't open a present again, and that was, we'll say an extra life in the last play. The last one, it could be anything. It's completely random. The randomizer sucked.
After all the work, after you've tried to identify all the presents,
exactly,
thrown away.
Once you get to that point where you still haven't found the randomizer and you're getting down to your last few presents, if you have all the good stuff, like, you'll just drop them. It's like, it doesn't matter. It's not good enough. I know what I know the promotion and the extra life. Like, I don't need to take any more chances if I can't identify it. So the presents were great, like they give you really good benefits. The Toejam and Earl, especially the first one, was very non-violent. The only attacking option you had, because they didn't have punches or anything like that, was if you opened the tomato present. You could either get tomatoes or a slingshot, which also shot tomatoes. There was also tomato rain, but that would also hurt you, so it wasn't as useful. But yeah, then you could pop enemies with that. So I guess basically kill them, but they would pop. So yeah, that was the only way you could fight. But generally speaking, it's a hard thing to explain, but the presents just added this like really fun vibe to it. And the randomness of it always made it an adventure. Because finding cash to identify the presents was huge.
Yep.
But when you have to take that gamble sometimes, and the main reason why you take that gamble is because once you'd want to go back down to level 1, because this is one of the things I always thought was super cool. On level 1, there's it's the level you start on, and you start on a small island, and it's surrounded by water.
Just to get used to how to play it, essentially.
Exactly. There's a few presents there, and then you take the elevator to go up to the, your first real level. But once you have enough presents, it's worth going back down to level 1, because if you have the Icarus wings or the rocket skates, you can find access to a secret level, which has always been super cool to me. But that was part of the fun of collecting presents too. And like, it was a gamble if you hadn't had them all identified yet. You didn't have the Icarus wings or the rocket skates or the inner tube, one of the ones that would get you to the secret level. But you'd still like, well, I'm full on presents, so why won't I'm going to go down there and hope that I get it. And every once in a while you'd get the total bummer, and that would suck. Or the randomizer, which in some cases might help you out at that point if you haven't identified very many and you still don't have what you need. But yeah, that was the fun of the presents. But then as far as Earthlings go, did you ever have a favorite bad guy in Toejam and Earl?
I think more from the second one, just character design wise, but the Boogeyman.
Yeah.
I mean, I hated him, but he was also...
It's a love-hate relationship.
Yep. But the Nerd Herd probably.
Yeah. Nerd Herd, those are probably my two favorites too. Because in the OG game, and all of them, I guess, but the Boogeyman, he starts off as just like a little silhouette that you see stalking around. And then when he gets close enough, he goes, boogie, boogie, boogie. And he does a lot of damage to you, and it sucks. But it's a cool concept of a character. And then there's also, so there's a lot of bad guys. Like I said, there's the Boogeyman.
There's a little devil guy that runs around with a pitchfork.
Yeah, the hamster in the wheel that will run you over. Probably one of my least favorite is Cupid. Yep. He doesn't do any damage to you, but if he hits you with his arrow, you fall in love, and it jacks up your movement control, so it turns them all around, and it's a pain in the butt if there's other enemies around. And then there's also the Karen with the kid in the shopping cart. She was the origination of the Karen, where she'd scream at her kid, and the kid would be there like screaming the whole time. And then like the crazy dentist guy that laughed maniacally and took really long strides to come and stab you with his...
Pretty creepy, actually.
Yeah, he's terrifying. But then there were the good Earthlings too, like obviously the Carrot Man that we mentioned, the wizard that would heal you, and the fat lady, what's her name? The opera singer.
Yeah.
That would pop enemies. You'd have to pay each of them, but there's
the hula girls who were not good, but not that great because they'd make you dance with them.
Yeah. Well, how could you not? They were so alluring.
True, but that makes you vulnerable to enemies.
Exactly. It would really suck when you're just trying to get past an area and you have the Boogeyman coming up on you, and you have to pass by a hula girl to get to safety, and she makes you dance. Just can't stop yourself. What hubba hubba. That's one of the little things that would pop up above their heads. So yeah, Toejam and Earl was... I mean, I don't know if I'm getting the point across well, and I apologize if I'm not, but to me, it was just an incredibly unique game with an infinite amount of replayability and
just fun, fun looking.
Yeah, I mean, it had I guess graphically it was just okay, but the colors, the characters, the sprites were all just very, like Alex said, very fun, and the music just really tied it all together. Just a great experience, and will always be one of my favorite games because to date, it's still one of the best co-op experiences, which we'll get to later. But honestly, they perfected even more with Back in the Groove. But so, like we said, we're going to talk a little bit about each of them. So that was the first game, and next came the second entry in the series, which was also on the Sega Genesis, and that was Panic on Funkatron. This game, I'm gonna let Alex talk about it a little bit because it's the one he played the most as a young Alex. But interestingly, just a little story, I guess. Well, like I said, me and my friends Nick and Mark, we loved Toejam and Earl, absolutely loved it. So when we found out there was a sequel, I don't remember if we found out when it was coming out or it had already been out and we found out about it. But we found out it was like a no duh. We have to play this game. We were so stoked. And I hate saying things like this because it makes me feel so old, but keep in mind, we didn't have really easy access to the internet. If we saw things about this, it maybe was in a magazine, but I didn't know anybody that got anything other than Nintendo Power. So
exactly. Was there a Sega?
there was,
magazine?
but I didn't know anybody who had it. I didn't
Okay,
even know it
yeah.
existed until the last 10 years, probably.
Yeah.
And then I think there was like a Game Informer and Game Pro and EGM. Like they all existed, but I didn't know anybody that had them. My parents weren't going to buy them for me.
Yeah.
So like you didn't know anything about the game, other than it existed. And because it was a sequel to Toejam and Earl,
It had to be played.
warranted playing. And I'll never forget, there's certain memories that are etched into your brain. And this is one of them because I remember getting the call from Nick that their parents were going to take them to rent it. Or they rented it and they were coming home and they wanted me to come over. So I came over, like my parents brought me over and we were so excited. We pop it in and immediately we were like, what is this?
This isn't my Toejam and Earl.
There was a moment like of pure like, what is going this? Like, yes, it is Toejam and Earl, but this is not Toejam and Earl. Like, we wanted a sequel to Toejam and Earl.
We wanted to play the same game.
It's all we want. We wanted to play the same game, 100%. And this was not the same game. Yeah, but I'll let Alex get into that a little bit. But man, the disappointment was real. I very clearly remember. I don't even think we beat the first level, and we went back to Toejam and Earl. Like that's it was literally how it played out. Now years later, I have played and appreciate the game, but as a young Chris Perry was not having it. None of us
Not impressed.
But Alex, why don't you tell us some about Panic and Funkatron?
I was impressed.
You fool.
I was much more of a platformer. So Toejam and Earl was fun for me, but not wasn't as much my cup of tea. But for platforming, where it's just a side scroller platformer, that was my jam. So my toe jam.
Gross.
So going from a top-down view of the first game, Toejam and Earl, where you walk around and you have the split screen, going from that to just a full side-scroller game, it's a completely different game. You're not the goal is different, the gameplay is different. It's just it looks different. I can see why that would happen, but for me it was beautiful because the characters, the sprites were larger, more imaginative with what they're able to show with the. Now, what happened is with this game, of course, to give some backstory, is Toejam and Earl get off planet Earth in the first game and get back to Funkatron, and unfortunately, when they get back, they find out that Earthlings have stowed their way onto their ship, and now they have to capture the Earthlings that are on planet Funkatron and return them to Earth.
Classic Earthlings, always looking for a free ride.
Yep, but instead of shooting them or something like that, you have to catch them in jars. And you have to find the Earthlings too, because some are hidden in the scenery. So it was just a completely different game. But for me, it was a very fun game.
Yeah, it's as an adult, I've only gone back to it much more recently, probably in the last 10 years or so. I finally played it again and was like, okay, this is actually a really good side-scrolling game, and it is, like Alex said, beautiful. Like, it's probably one of the most visually striking games on the Genesis.
Yep.
Like all the sprite work, like once again, like Alex said, all the sprite work's great. The music is still great. Like they still got everything right about the game. It just wasn't the same Toejam and Earl.
Yep.
And now as an adult, I have a completely different appreciation for it. And as who I am now, like I would even like another game like that in this series.
Oh, yeah.
Like I would play it in a heartbeat.
Yep.
But now it's also, I don't know, I have a different understanding on how things work, and I can appreciate that. But one of the, to me, like most interesting things is because as a kid and even as a young adult, like I always wondered, like, why did they change it up? Like, why would you do that? But there's been plenty of interviews about it too. But so Greg Johnson and Mark Forsinger, who were the creators of the game, of the original game, and then 2 as well. It wasn't their original idea to go for a side scroller. They wanted to make a direct sequel to Toejam and Earl in the same vein, the same type of engine.
They wanted to make it for Chris Perry, young Chris Perry.
They loved me. They just didn't know it yet. And but Sega didn't want that. is pretty much what it is. They went to Sega with, I believe what they did was they went to Sega with an early build of what the sequel was going to be, and they weren't getting the support. So Sega wanted, what was popular at the time was side-scrollers. And mascot side-scrollers were hugely popular. Obviously, Mario and Sonic being the main reason, but at this point, I believe Donkey Kong Country was out, and Donkey Kong Country was probably one of the biggest games on Super Nintendo as well. So side-scrolling platformers were huge. So that's what was selling. So that's what they wanted. And to be fair, I believe the game actually did pretty well sales-wise. It's what it seems like from what I read, but wasn't what I wanted at the time. That being said, there were still some really cool ideas that came out of it. Outside of the game being just a great platformer, they did, and they still had co-op too, which was cool. But they did introduce things like the scanning of the area, which got brought back in the Groove. I believe the Hyperfunk zone started in Panic on Funkatron, which played a part once again in Back on the Groove. And
Peebo, the boombox dancing alien friend.
So quite a few things came because of this. Plus the first look at Funkatron, which was really cool and quite beautiful. So the game has every right to exist, and as an adult, I appreciate it now.
Yeah, that's good.
But yeah, as a kid, I was having none of it.
Man, I wish we could see the design of what the true sequel would have been like.
I would love to. It'd be really cool. I have a little note, not on that, but on something similar that I'll touch on later. But yeah, it would be so cool to see that data. Like, what was the game going to look like before it became this? But it's probably long since lost to time. But yeah, so after Toejam and Earl 1 and Toejam and Earl 2 came out, there was a definite lull in the releases of Toejam and Earl. And, you know, as I'm getting older, it still was there was a lot of fond memories of playing the first game. But it was kind of falling to the wayside because now at this point, I'm a teenager probably, and you don't hear about something for a while. You just assume it's gone, you know. And we're kind of into things like GoldenEye, and now it's, you know, Perfect Dark too, but Time Splitters, or I was really into RPGs at this point. So my attention had changed completely. But I remember, I don't think I even heard about it until it came out. But we're past the 64 PS1 era now, and we're into the PS2, GameCube, Xbox, Gen 6, right?
Sure. I can't get you track of the Gen.
I always get it wrong, but I believe Gen 6. We're into that era. And like I said, I've kind of, in my mind, I don't think that there's ever going to be a new Toejam and Earl. I hadn't even thought about it.
By this time, the Dreamcast had come and gone.
Exactly. But lo and behold, the Xbox is out, and Sega, who doesn't own the rights to it anymore at this point, but Sega did help with the publishing of Toejam and Earl 3, and they were big supporters of the Xbox, and it ended up becoming an Xbox exclusive and coming out on Xbox. And I own it now, but as a teenager, I didn't own it because I didn't have an Xbox. But once again, my friend Nick and his brother Mark, who's also my friend, I don't know why I do that, they both had Xboxes, and they both owned it, and I played over there. And it was much closer to what I wanted.
Yes.
We played this game a lot. Once Nick moved to, my friend Nick lived in Redding, California for a while, which is about a 9-hour drive from, up in this area in Tacoma. But once he moved there, I'd go down there and visit every year, and we'd play. This was probably the game we played the most for years still, because it was still a fun co-op game. It still had, the different levels. It was not the same as the first game because now it felt more like a 3D platformer.
Yeah. But still kind of mostly top down.
It was kind of like
a little bit lower perspective.
I'm doing hand motions here that nobody can see, but
the angle is changing.
It is. We're getting to different times here. But so a lot of the concepts were still there. You still had presents. You still got, money that you'd use to buy things. There were still bad Earthlings. There were still good Earthlings. But instead of, going from using an elevator to go from one level to the next, you kind of and I might be a little wrong since it's been a while since I played it, but you would go from, basically across different islands into different worlds through doors that would take you to different areas. And then you'd finish whatever you did there and come back to like a hub world a little bit. But it was the first game in the series to go fully 3D. And looked pretty good. And I was trying to do some memory refresh today just to make sure I still kind of remembered things about it. And I'm surprised that the game looks better than I even imagined it still did. The Xbox was very impressive.
Yeah.
And it's aged well. I mean, it looks like an early 2000s, 3D game, but I feel like it looks good.
Yeah, they translated well to the 3D.
They did. They did a good job of keeping the cartoony alien vibe, but not. It was 3D. It didn't look like a cartoon necessarily. I guess 3D kind of. Anyway, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But yeah, so the transition there was really good. It had cutscenes. It had voice acting, and the voice acting. This is one of the things, like when I was watching, because I just basically put on a Let's Play to kind of remind myself, and I was very impressed. Like, I have fond memories of the voice acting, but it was way better than I even would have imagined. It's good. Like, it really holds up. And I loved the character select screen. When you go between the characters, they each have their own rap that they do to, like, introduce themselves. It was perfectly Toejam and Earl.
Yeah.
But in the 2000s,
Yep.
in the new day and age.
Now, who was involved with the development of this third one?
So it was still Greg Johnson. So like I mentioned it a little bit, he was one of the two creators of the game. He was the one that masterminded the project, but his it's not work partner. I don't know what's the term I'm looking for. Doesn't matter.
I don't know.
His work partner, Mark Vorsinger, I believe is how it's pronounced. They worked on the games together, and I think they still worked on this one together too. But at this point, they owned the rights. They bought the rights from Sega, who apparently just had no interest. The games never did as well in Japan and in Europe. Anyway, they were made here in North America, and they did better here in North America.
Just too funky for them.
They were too funky. People just didn't understand the funk. But some of the things that they changed in this game was they added they added the funk ability in the game, which was a play on the Force. And it was Funk Fu, which you got different abilities and different power-ups as you went through, usually from the presence, but you had like a basic one that you always had that threw like a shockwave out in front of you. And one thing that never stopped being enjoyable was which is kind of sick, but knocking like the enemies off the map. But especially the bunny rabbits and the little girls.
Just like little
because the little girl was like, she was like evil. Like she would say like the most evil things. Like I don't know. Just I'm not gonna get into it, but it's funny. But yeah, when you knock them off, they go, ah! Or the bunny had this like high pitched squeal. It was terrible. But there was a level, one of the small little levels that you could go to that had like a ton of bunnies on it, and you just like sit there and just knock them all off.
They knew what they were doing.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was even a goal, like knock them off in a time limit. But once again, it's been a while. But we were all sick because we were all doing it and just cracking up. But yeah, it was a really cool game. I mean, it got pretty mixed reviews, I think, at the time. But I always liked it. I wanted to go back and play it some, like before this episode, but I don't have an original Xbox. I have the game, but it's not backwards compatible. So I need to get myself an OG Xbox so that I can have access to it, so that me and Alex or whoever else that wants to can play it at some point.
Play it.
Because he came over here with the specific intent, because he'd never played this one before, to play it. And I don't know why in my head I didn't realize that it wasn't going to be backwards compatible. I just thought it was a no-brainer. Why wouldn't Toejam and Earl be backwards compatible? Well, apparently nobody else asked that question, because it wasn't. So Toejam and Earl 3, Mission to Earth. I don't think I ever said that. That was the title of the game. That came out in 2002. So in basically about 10 years, we got 3 Toejam and Earl games. And in the mix there, too, we also got a spin-off game on the Sega Genesis.
Yes.
Called Toejam and Earl Ready, Aim, Tomato.
Yep. Came with the, whatever that Super Scope.
Yeah, the Menacer.
The Menacer.
Yeah. It came on the 6-in-1 cartridge. Like the Super Scope had the 6-in-1 cartridge, too. It came on that. And I didn't know that existed for a long time. But
my cousin had it.
did he?
Yep.
So you'd actually played it?
I played it, yep.
Dude, I've played it since. So where I actually played it was at a GameStop in the 2000s. There was a plug-and-play.
Okay.
A Menacer plug-and-play, the little TV thing. And they had it hooked up to a TV there. And that's the first time I ever played it. I remember being like, I need this. Like, I didn't know this existed. This Toejam and Earl game. But yeah, so in 10 years, we got, well, I guess 11 years. We got Toejam and Earl 1.
Close enough.
Toejam and Earl Panic on Funkatron. The Toejam and Earl Ready, Aim, Tomato, which was really like a mini game.
Yeah, very mini. Yeah.
And then in 2002, we got Toejam and Earl 3 on Xbox. After that, there was definitely a lull in Toejam and Earl content. I remember in 2006, not long after the Wii came out, it was one of the early Virtual Console Genesis games that got released, and of course I bought that right away, and played it multiple times throughout the years, because that was I don't think I even owned a Genesis at that point. I have one now,
Yeah.
and I've had it for a long time, but I don't know that I owned it then. But having that on the Wii was perfect. Like, frankly, my Wii was a glorified Virtual Console. Like, it's what I used it for more than anything. But yeah, we got the original Toejam and Earl on the Wii Virtual Console. A few years later, I want to say it was 2010-ish, they released it again on PS3 and 360. Just a digital version of it. I think it was Sega Ages or something like that. They did, a handful of releases. Which that was cool because you could play it online, I believe.
Did they ever release Panic on Funkatron?
I don't think so.
Ever?
I think it. So that's what I was going to talk about that too, because other than those two ways, I don't think there was another way to play Toejam and Earl for years.
Okay.
And that included Panic on Funkatron, because Sega released a ton of compilations. Once they got out of the console market, they were all about publishing games, but I remember the Sega Sonic's Mega Collection on the GameCube, and later on the Xbox and PS2. That was the start of what would become a nonstop onslaught of compilations that Sega would release.
Yep.
But none of them until the Ultimate Genesis Collection that came out in 2017.
Which, if it doesn't have Panic on Funkatron, is not Ultimate.
Yeah, right. I don't remember if it does. I think it does.
I gotta look it up.
I think it does.
Some other time.
Yeah. So time not right now.
Next episode.
But all those years, like, just completely untouched. It's crazy to me that Sonic's Ultimate Genesis Collection, that was a big one that came out, because I think it had 50 Genesis games on it, and that was on PS3 and 360, and that didn't have either Toejam and Earl on it, which was just like a mighty sin to me. Like, I still bought it because it had so many games on it that I liked.
But you didn't like it.
I wasn't happy about it. When I earned that platinum trophy, I was livid. But yeah, so there's just this huge lull with no Toejam and Earl. Once again, it kind of starts to think like it's never gonna like.
Well, it's just a
probably
thing in the past
gone.
now.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. Just like a lot of things that it's great, loved it. I wish there'd be more, but it's probably gone. But come 2015, that's when I probably saw it on IGN or something. That's when a new Toejam and Earl finally got announced. That was Toejam and Earl Back in the Groove. It was announced by Greg Johnson with the addition of that they were going to do a Kickstarter, and it came out in March. The Kickstarter started in March 2015. It was obvious that this was going to be a true sequel-ish. Well, I say sequel, but a true successor. That's what I'm looking for, of the original Toejam and Earl. They're going, elevators to the next level, where you can do randomized levels, you can do fixed worlds. You can do it all. It's going to be a successor to Toejam and Earl.
The original.
The OG.
The OG.
And of course, I was stoked at the time. I didn't have any money. I mean, I was newly married and we were broke, so I wasn't able to back it, which sucked. But I kept an eye on it after that. But it was successfally funded. And then after that, it just became a little bit of a waiting game. It's most likely coming out. I know there were updates here and there. Then it was 16. At this point, like I said, I know it's coming out, but it's kind of in the back of my mind. It was 2016. We went to PAX, and Alex was there. And for anybody who's never been, PAX is the Penny Arcade Expo. It's in Seattle every year, with the exception of the COVID years.
The dark times.
The dark times. We don't talk about those. But yeah, and it's a big video game convention, where it was kind of like a mini E3, less announcements, but all the demos. The big three: Nintendo, Sony, Microsoft, and a lot of the other big publishers like Square Enix and Capcom and whatever. They all took over the main floor of the Seattle Convention Center. And that's where you spent most of your time when you'd go, because you're waiting in long lines. You want the swag. You want to play these games you're excited for. But there are other floors to the convention center with other stuff going on, and we almost never went to those other floors. Not for any sake other than the fact that we only ever are usually able to go for a day.
Yep.
And we only have so much time, and the main floor ended up taking up most of that time a lot of the time. But this year, and I don't know why, because I don't believe I knew it was up there. But we went up to the top, the third floor, the top floor, whatever it is. And that's where we saw the Adult Swim game, and then we saw the Toejam statue, and I was like, oh my god, it's here. And oh man, I was so excited.
Yep.
And I'm pretty sure, other than you, everybody around me was like, "What the heck are you talking about, dude? Like, why are you so excited?" Because I was like giddy, like like I was so excited that it was here and I could play it.
I remember that too.
Yeah, you remember being giddy for me?
Yep.
Such a good friend. He's giddy on my behalf. But yeah, so that was awesome. I remember waiting in line, and I don't remember who it was, but they were doing trivia. And giving out the soundtracks.
Oh
and
yeah, yep.
They gave out the wise Carrot Man keychains, which I don't know what happened to mine, and that drives me absolutely
same
bonkers.
here.
But yeah, I remember being just beyond excited, being able to ask questions like, "Is there going to be level 0?" Like, yeah, I mean, I remember acing the trivia too. Not humble brag, but I remember he asked all the questions, and he was like, "You do know your Toejam and Earl." I was like, "Yes, I was a tiny bit obsessed as a child, and maybe still am. I don't know. That's up for debate." I do not have Toejam and Earl plushes and hats and a shirt on and a sweater. Like, that's not things that are happening.
You won't
right
see
now.
a picture of all the swag that he has.
You won't see my sickness in picture form. But yeah, I was stoked, and we sat there, and me and Alex played the demo together, and I was like, "This is it."
Yeah.
Like this is Toejam and Earl.
It exactly was.
And I was so stoked. And then they gave me a pin, which was like the icing on the cake. A really cool penny arcade pin.
They said you're the number one fan I've ever met. Yeah. Here's a pin for you.
No, it's like a teacher giving a gold star just to get away from it. Here, take this.
All right, kid, get out of here.
Get the heck out of here. Oh man, but yeah, then it was like I went from knowing it was coming and like
hoping,
but probably kind of like also forgetting here and there, like, to being back. It was back on track. Toejam Earl was back in the groove, back in the forefront of my mind, and I was stoked again. And man, yeah, it was a hard wait from that point on, but the excitement was there. And then the next year at PAX again, they were there again. I think this time they weren't with Adult Swim Games, but they were on their own. I could be wrong about that. But that's where we got these hats that I have 2 of. I don't know how I ended up with the second one. Somebody that was there didn't want theirs. So it's a trucker hat, and I look terrible in it, but it sure is cool. I have 2 of those. We got another pin.
Yep.
Which I might say I like even more than the first one. It's fantastic. And then also this time, I played the game again, loved the game even more than the first time, but I also had the opportunity to meet Greg Johnson this time, which was a treat for me because I talked about this with Kyle, which was when we did the recap of games in 2023. We talked about how, like, a lot of people, like, they want to meet celebrities like that, like movie stars, music, like artists, whatever. There's a better term there than music artists, but singers and whatever. That's like their goal. Those are their heroes. But like for me and him, we're like, it's video game creators like that. It holds so much weight to me that, like, meeting somebody that created this thing that I love so much, like, I just want to talk. I just want to talk to you and find out more. Like, this is like, it's amazing to me. Video game, like, publishers, writers, whatever, and then also voice actors are probably the 2 things that I kind of geek out. Well, I geek out a lot about a lot of things, but when it comes to celebrities, those are the 2 that really are big deals to me. So yeah, I had an opportunity to meet him, and it was awesome. He was a super nice guy. He was very patient with me because I'm sure I was obnoxious. But yeah, blast. So then that was probably 2016. I think Back in the Groove finally came out in 2019, I want to say. So it took another couple years, but it was definitely worth the wait. I remember when it launched, my friends Nick and Mark, the 2 people I played Toejam and Earl with the most growing up, they both came over. They both brought their Switches, and we sat there and we played it like all day, basically. We just sat there playing, taking turns playing on the TV and whatever, and just had a blast. It was just so nice to, like, be back to it. It felt right again. I think at launch it was a little buggy, but it was still a fun experience, and they've long since fixed all those bugs. But the game just felt right. It had, like I kind of already mentioned, it had all of the stuff that made the first one so good, including World 0 coming back, or Level 0. But they also added like we talked about, things from Panic on Funkatron that made it good, like the
Yep.
Hyperfunk zone,
Yep.
the doors to different areas, the even shaking the tree, and the street. What are the things called that the car you put money in for a car?
Oh yeah, the parking.
Parking meters. There it is. You shake a tree and the parking meter would come out that you could put money in that would make something pop up.
Yep.
The flying presents were a thing again. In Panic on Funkatron, they were just points, but in this, all the presents are back.
Peebo with the dancing minigame.
Yep, Peebo with the dancing minigame, which was a lot of fun. I always max that one out really quick. I love music rhythm games. So, and on top of that, they added, so obviously Toejam and Earl were back, and they brought back Letitia, and then they brought back some new characters too, some that started off unlocked and some that you unlocked through multiple playthroughs. So you had Toejam and Earl, like I said, then you had Classic Toejam and Classic Earl, so the base ones were based off their new design for Back in the Groove, then the classic ones, or excuse me, old school ones, were based off of their original Toejam and Earl designs. And then you had LaWanda, Letitia, like I said, Flo, who was Earl's mom, Peebo, who he's just cool, and then Geek Jam, who is Toejam's cousin, who's a little less cool than Toejam. So it was cool to have all these extra characters. And then the game definitely leans in more to its roguelite heritage too, because with each playthrough, at the end of the game, at the end of a playthrough, you get a hat that, once you start a new game, at the beginning of each level, it will randomly pick one of those hats for you. And some of them give you buffs. Some of them are completely neutral. They just look cool or look stupid. And some of them, might have a negative effect. But that gave you a reason to play outside of the fact that the randomized playthroughs are fun, but nowadays that might not be enough to hold somebody's attention like it was in the 90s. But, roguelites are super popular because people like that goal of playing through multiple times to unlock more, to, kind of complete the game. And with the hats, you really had that option. Plus unlockable presents that you could find by playing through the game and, shaking trees and chasing them down. Backer islands that you could go to where you could see people who backed the game, at a higher tier probably. But yeah, overall, just everything about the game was exactly what I'd always wanted from a Toejam and Earl sequel. And just a fun little tidbit that you may or may not have known. Macaulay Culkin, the actor, behind, the kid from Home Alone, he was a fan of the series, and he ended up connecting with Greg Johnson after he was praising the games on his podcast. He had a podcast called Bunny Ears. So then he ended up becoming an executive producer on the game, giving his input in certain areas. And so you'll see on the game's loading screen where they go through the publishers, Bunny Ear Games or whatever is one of them, and that's Macaulay Culkin's
that's really cool.
Publishing company, I guess, or whatever it is he does. I probably could have got more information on that, but I just thought that was cool.
I should have called him.
You should have. You should have had him here. Then he could have went.
Chris did the thing with his hands on his face.
Yeah, like screaming.
Yep.
Home Alone. Oh man, you guys would have loved it if you could see it, or not. You probably have already stopped listening at this point. But yeah, I just thought that was
Hannah,
cool.
are you still here?
Hannah was gone the second the episode started. You know what, Hannah? I look forward to playing Toejam and Earl with you now that I've converted you into a fan. But yeah, so that's the like I said, I could spend a lot of time going. There's way more detail with this series, with history and stuff that I didn't touch on because I wasn't looking. I wanted to touch more on the passion that I have for the series, what makes the series fun to me and to others that I've known, and why I would like people to give it a try. Maybe I didn't necessarily need to go crazy deep on everything else because other people have done it before and probably have done it a lot better than I ever could. Because frankly, I'm not always the best when it comes to fine details. But yeah, I love this series to death. And like Back in the Groove is now one that I play pretty regularly. I can always go back to the original. And even like 3, I want to go back and play it now. I mean, I wanted to play it before, but I just wish it was more easily accessible. I just need to get an original Xbox. But for anybody who's interested in Back in the Groove, it always goes on sale. So if you don't want it, it's only $15 new, But if you didn't want to pay that, I've seen it as cheap as like $2-3 on sale on all the storefronts.
But actually, you should wait until it's more expensive.
You should be supporting.
Yeah,
them.
exactly.
You know, if you have an opportunity to pay. So that's what I've done. I bought the game digitally on Switch at full price and digitally on PlayStation at full price because I wanted trophies, and physically on Switch. So
match Chris.
You got to match me here, because obviously now that you've heard all of this information, you're going to hear more still. You're going to be as big of a fan as I am.
Mm-hmm.
It only makes sense. So we're going to... One last tidbit, actually, before we get into the next segment of this discussion. So we talked about how there was the Ready Aim Tomato light gun game. But there is one other Toejam and Earl side game, so to speak, that is out there that I've never played. And that's so Toejam and Earl 3 was originally supposed to be a Nintendo 64 game. And I don't believe it ever got too far off the ground before it started to become a Dreamcast game, because the 64, by the time the game was getting into, you know, the point where they were working on it, I think the 64 was already kind of on its obvious way out. It wasn't super successful. So it started becoming a Dreamcast game before the Dreamcast crashed, and it eventually became a Xbox game.
If only it would have saved the Dreamcast.
It probably could have. I know you're laughing, but it would have been. No, nothing could have saved the Dreamcast, unfortunately. But yeah, so it was supposed to be a Dreamcast game before it eventually became an Xbox game. But in 2013, an unreleased, so the unreleased Dreamcast version, somebody found the Katana development kit for it, and they asked Sega to approve its release. It never was, but Johnson and Forsanger agreed to it because Sega, was the publisher for it, even though they didn't own it. But they agreed to go ahead and let them release it. So in 2018, it ended up becoming released for public download, a Dreamcast prototype. So I have yet to play it.
Which I think you can actually just download onto a CD.
Exactly, because the Dreamcast, that's why the Dreamcast failed. One of the biggest reasons is you didn't have to buy any software for it. You could just burn it. But yeah, so it's free. You can download it. I've seen people selling like homebrew versions of it online before. But yeah, you can just make it yourself. I need to play it just to... because it's kind of sad that I haven't.
Well, that's a goal now.
It is. I have my eye on it.
He's got his eye
on it.
Which the new version is much better. Yeah.
Touche. I mean, we have the real thing out now, so it's not like we need it, but it'd still be fun to play it.
Yeah.
So now what we're going to do is a little backstory here, which I'm sure you guys all love hearing backstories from me all the time, is about August of last year. I had decided I was going to do this episode, and I was going to do it in October. And, this isn't October. This is April, because I have really bad anxiety, in case you guys didn't know. And sometimes I really wanted this to be good, and I hope it is. Hopefully this was a good episode, or it continues to be. But poor Alex has been planned to be on this episode for me. I have canceled on him, no joke, at least 6 times.
Hey, I did it once too.
Yeah, he did cancel on me once, just to get even. I know he knew, like, he never going to come. He just wanted... No, I'm just playing. But yeah, it took me getting on new meds and, like balancing kind of some of this stuff out to finally be like, I can do this. Yeah, I'm good. I don't know why. I think it's because I want people to at least listen to it and not be completely bored. But also, I hope people listen and are like, okay, we'll try this game. Yeah. Like, he's made it sound kind of good. And I think I put too much pressure on myself. Because people, don't care that much. But anyway, so back in August, in trying to prepare for this episode, I thought, what do I have to lose? I'm just going to send Human Nature, who is the company that Greg Johnson, I'm really bad at these kinds of terms, but I think he's the owner of the company. I think he runs it. And he obviously was one of the creators of Toejam and Earl. But I just sent them an email, basically just saying, hey, I'm a really big fan. I love the series. It's one of the most talked about things on my podcast, and almost to the point where it's become a joke, like whether or not I'll mention it in an episode. But I just have a lot of love for the series. And what I'd like to do is, I'm not asking for a handout. I just want to know, like, if there's any kind of fun tidbits or anything that anybody on the team would like to throw at me to just mention on the episode. And I kind of sort of didn't actually even expect a response, because you don't, I'm nobody. So, why would I get a response? But not only did I get a response, but I ended up getting a response directly from Greg Johnson, which, my poor little mind was blown. Jasmine was probably like, I was like, oh my God. And Jasmine was like, what? But she was excited for me too, because she knows how much this meant. But yeah, he responded basically saying they elevated the message directly to him, and he appreciated, my how hyped I was and wanted to answer any questions I had. So him, and then he also CC'd Nap, who was one of the producers on Back in the Groove. So I asked them a series of questions. I tried not to get too crazy, because I could have probably gone on forever, but I didn't want to take like a bunch of their time. But yeah, I asked them a few questions, and they responded. So they both responded to most of the questions. So what we're going to do is take a few minutes and just go over some of these. I'll read the question that I asked. Alex is going to read the response. And then, we'll talk about some of them. We'll move on from others relatively quickly. But this is more like, for any other Toejam Earl fans that are listening to it, I feel like this is just really cool information. To me, too, nothing is cooler in the video game community than when the creators and the people who worked on the game are actually passionate about the game. Because we're very used to, publishers like, I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus necessarily, but like EA and Activision, and where everything just feels like it's just about the money.
Yeah.
And it doesn't mean that some of the games aren't fun or that we don't love them, but there's not a lot of love, especially in a lot of ways, especially in how the teams are being ran. I mean, look at how many people are being laid off in these industries.
Yes, pretty sad.
There's not a lot of love there, but when you have these smaller developers and you are able to talk to them and see the appreciation they have for the IP that they've created and they're working on, and then their fandom as well, it really means a lot to me. And these are, to me, the people we should be supporting the most. Mm-hmm. We all are going to buy the next, Star Wars game or the next Call of Duty or whatever we're into, but indie games sometimes go under the wayside. But I think it's kind of on us sometimes to support the ones that we like the most and to preach the word a little bit louder.
Yeah.
And obviously Toejam and Earl is one of them for me, if not the most, my most appreciated indie game. So, all right, Alex, you ready for this?
I think so.
All right. So I apologize if this gets a little boring because it is a lot of reading, but we're going to try to make it not that way. Okay. So my first question was, the funk and hip hop music, or the funk hip hop music and theme of the series is synonymous with Toejam and Earl. When the original game came out, to my knowledge, there were either no other or very few games that ventured into those genres musically. How did it feel to be able to bring a genre of music into the game that you had so much adoration for?
Now, do you want Greg's or Nap's response?
Go ahead and do... So Nap basically kind of said kind of what I did, where it kind of influenced his music going forward, which I feel like that might have done it for me as well. But go ahead and read Greg's response to this one.
So as you might know already, I was in high school in the 70s, and that's often when our musical tastes get set. I went to school in LA in a very mixed racial environment, and I'm half black and half Jewish. I've loved old school funk since those early years, as it's really all I listened to growing up. And it was something I incorporated into the game very naturally. I really wanted people to enjoy the rhythms as they played in a relaxed, laid-back way. The cool strut of Big Earl and the funky rhythms and pace of the game just sort of seemed to fit together. I always hoped people who didn't really know much about the genre would discover a love for it through the game, so that when I hear stories like yours and Nap's, it really makes me feel good.
And I appreciated that response because I've read interviews and stuff with him from him, so I already knew he had an appreciation for the genre, but it's nice to see like he was able to take two things that he loved and merge them together. It's just so cool. And I mean, I've said it a bajillion times, and that's not even a word. Bajillion is not an actual...
I think it is.
Is it? Okay,
yeah.
So it is a word.
It's in the
That's
dictionary.
how smart I am.
Yeah.
Bajillion. Yeah, I mean, I love the music. I have the official soundtrack. Now I have the bootleg one too. And I mean, I love them. I could listen to it all the time. And in Back in the Groove too, they actually did a full rap at the end during the end credits. And it's great. Like, I love it. If you haven't heard it, you should listen to it.
Yeah, it's good.
All right. So then the next question I asked was, how long had you been working on Back in the Groove before the Kickstarter campaign?
Well, Nap talked a little about that, how he said that Greg originally pitched an idea for the DS where you can control the players with the stylus on the bottom screen and the map on the top screen, similar to Zelda Phantom Hourglass. But after not having a lot of luck finding a publisher, he decided to take the idea of a new game to Kickstarter. And that's when Greg says, yes, it's a bit hard to say because, as Nat points out, I'd wanted to do the true remake of the game for a long time before the Kickstarter, even going way back to the DS version that I pitched and almost got off the ground at one point. To answer your question literally, I think Jeff Kreis and I worked on the prototype for about a year before we launched the Kickstarter campaign.
Yep. So, I mean, I actually asked later, too, what console, if any, old or new, that he could release a Toejam Earl game, what would it be? Mm-hmm. And I mentioned that, like, personally, I would have loved a DS or 3DS one. And so when they mentioned that, I was like, it almost could have been.
Yep.
I have a lot of love for the DS and the 3DS both. And Toejam Earl just would have fit perfectly. I actually had it flipped in my head. I kind of thought the map would be on the bottom and you just move the characters normally. But it's a cool idea. Phantom Hourglass is hit or miss, but it has its fans, and it is fun from what I played. But the game I've played that's more like that is Dragon Ball Origins. Same control style. You move Goku around with the stylus, and you do all the attacks on the bottom screen. And it's cool because it actually uses the console the way, in a way it's supposed to be. And what could have been, I would have loved it. And it's too bad. I don't think homebrewing for DS or 3DS is very easy. I don't have a lot of knowledge in that area, but you don't see homebrew games for those two consoles, and you see them for just about everything else. So it's probably never. I mean, not that it would ever happen anyway, but the odds of it happening are even smaller.
Yeah, it's not as easy as just popping a CD in.
Exactly. Okay, so then the next question I asked was, were there any ideas for Earthlings that got left out of Back in the Groove?
All right, so Knapp said pretty much all of Greg's ideas for Earthlings and Presents made it into the game. But it sounds like there were some that were cut. So there's Hamster in a Ball, Bees.
In the original.
From the original.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ninja Bunny, Cheerleader with Pom-Poms, and then even Cowboy. Then Greg says, here's something interesting for you that was probably never mentioned. The game was originally going to have a time travel mechanic, and that's why you see Earthlings like King Tut and Gandhi. There is mention of 4 time zones: Renaissance, Medieval, Ancient, Prehistoric, and Mummies and Knights were once considered, but these ideas were very early on. Knapp's answers was pretty complete. One thing I can add perhaps is that I was really excited in the early days of development about the idea of zooming way back every time you changed levels and allowing players to see all the levels stacked in space. We tried to build this, and we were going to make the levels sort of spiral upwards in space. It looked super awesomely cool, but it was just too slow. We didn't feel we had the time to improve the frame rate, so we took it out. Oh, interesting. So it's actually a physical, or not physical, but a limitation of the game.
Yeah.
Knapp is right about the time travel idea. Different levels were originally going to be themed with different eras. We gave up on that because it seemed like we would need too many Earthlings to really pull that off, and too many world assets. Buildings and trees and stuff. Would have been cool.
Yeah, I love the idea of that. And honestly, those are the kinds of ideas that if eventually they make another one, I could see them.
If they have enough for a new game.
I can see it working in another game because it's obvious. At the end of the day, this game didn't actually need to be more than just a successor to Toejam and Earl, and it worked. And I'm glad it's this way. But that sounds awesome too.
Yeah.
I would love if they do another one that just gets a little bit more out there in its own way. But I decided to wait to talk about the Earthlings in the game until we got to this question too, because the fact is there is a lot of new Earthlings in this game and a lot of cool ones, and like ones like Gandhi is a new good hero who, when you're around him, he basically keeps this, as he moves, there's like an area of flowers that stay around him, and he keeps you invisible, immune to being hurt.
Brings peace.
Brings peace, exactly. And so that was really cool. But then some of the new bad enemies were so clever, and specifically, and this might get mentioned again in a little bit, but specifically the internet troll is a fantastic. The second I saw it, and so the best part about it is he's a little trollish looking character, and he hurls insults at you. It's little bubbles, speech bubbles that have basically like swear words in them, but they're blurred out. Like he's basically throwing hateful comments at you, like an internet troll does. But unlike most enemies when you touch them, you take damage. The bubbles he throws at you damage you, but when you get close enough to him, he panics and the facade of the troll goes away, and it's just like a little like a obnoxious kid or whatever, and he runs from you and screams for help because like most internet trolls, they don't have anything to back up what they're saying in real life. They're a bunch of jerks. I just think it's so clever, and it's my absolute favorite, probably one of my favorite like enemies in a game period, because it's funny and like so poignant. Like very well done. I also like in this game too, they added a lot more of the positive heroes, but one of them is a group of people playing like D&D. And they're neutral, I guess, because you basically you bet a price and you just guess like if your number is going to be higher or lower than what they roll on the dice.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But I just think it's cool. I like the addition of things like, more characters like that in the game. Oh, and I gotta mention the mall cop too, because it's just funny. He runs around on a Segway.
Paul Blart.
Yeah, very Paul Blart. Okay, so we'll skip the next question. But then I mentioned level 0 is iconic. Was there ever any doubt it would be included in Back in the Groove?
And Greg says, not even for a moment. The only question was, how cool could we make level 0? I really enjoyed writing the hot tub dialogue. So we talk about the hot tub on level 0?
We didn't.
Okay. Well, so you end up with where there's a hot tub with 2 of the hula girls in there. You can jump in with them.
And it heals you.
It heals you. And then
you get your flirt on.
There's some tee-hees going on.
Some giggles and some titters. So that one is funny because obviously it sounds like I'm being a pervert when I say titters. But it's a word they say, and I think it must be a word for like laughing. Yeah. Titters.
Yep.
But people don't say titters now.
No, they don't.
Oh, man.
But going back to this, I really enjoyed writing the hot tub dialogues. It's different for the different characters. I love the idea of giving the hula girls some personality through the conversation.
Yeah, it's really cool. A neat touch, because in the original Toejam and Earl, when you get in the hot tub, it is just those little bubbles that say, ha-ha, giggles, titter. Nothing actually happens other than it heals your health. But now it's an actual event that each time you play through it, if you play with a different character, especially in co-op when you can have 2 people in there, it gives you a reason to go in and see more dialogue.
See what the combinations are. Yeah.
And then level 0 too. Obviously, I've mentioned how cool it is. And as a kid, it was just like a cool area. Like it was fun that there's this hidden thing that we know about, which probably wasn't that unknown at all. But it was always fun to get to. But you obviously had the hot tub where you could get healed, and then the lemonade stand where you got an extra life. And both of those made it through on this. And then on Back in the Groove, there's also one of the characters that do the music rhythm minigame. And then there's the whole Backer Island area too, where so there's the Backer Islands on normal levels where a person was there that you could talk to that actually backed the game. And then there's this Backer Island where it's just like graffitied billboards that more different back. It's probably a lower tier, I don't know, but where you can go and look at a bunch of different people that backed it, and there's a bunch of food and presents hiding around and stuff, and a bunch of hidden paths on it too, where that can lead you to special little islands off to the side where you can find more money and stuff. But yeah, it not having level 0 would have been criminal.
Yeah. Yep.
So I'm glad to know that it was always in the works. All right. Then I asked, are there any Easter eggs in the game you feel like many people missed? That many people end up missing while playing through the game?
So Nap was the one who brought these up a little more. So Greg thought I should bring up that during our Still in the Groove update, we added some new present synergies, extra effects that happen when you use 2 presents together. Some of these effects are hidden and only happen when you include some of the bad presents in the mix, so reasons to hold on to those. Many of these aren't known by the players. If you highlight Toejam and Earl's names in the backer section of our credits, a hidden song will play. It's an original TJ and E rap by Greg that was supposed to be sold on cassette through Sega magazines in the 90s. And a few players don't even know you can get to the North Pole from Funkatron. And here's where Greg chimed in. He says, Nap, I'm embarrassed to admit I can't remember this, but I think I recall some Easter egg related to the hot tub, like opening a present next to the hot tub. Maybe you remember what that was. So did we ever get an answer for that?
I think I might have. Let me look.
Because Nap did respond, I think, a little more. So I think here it is. So Naps responded, maybe you're thinking of when you chill in the hot tub long enough and they offer you some presents and farts. Farting is part of the original game too, if you want to know.
Yeah. Oh, also in the original game, sometimes when the elevator door opens up, Earl's pants will be on the ground. He gets embarrassed and lifts them up. It's hilarious. Fart humor never gets old.
And it says if you select the middle option of those presents, you always get a promotion present. So
see, I didn't even know
you people who haven't listened to or haven't played the game yet. This little inside info.
Yep. You get the good stuff when you listen to the X Button Gaming podcast, straight from the sources. Yeah, that was a lot of the stuff like I didn't know, like the presents opening together. Mm-hmm. That's one of the problems that I played this game co-op.
Yeah.
Me and Nick played through it a couple times. And I know you and I played through it.
Mm-hmm.
I think we played through it at least once.
Mm-hmm.
But I never even tried that stuff.
Yeah.
So now, like, and most of the time,
because that wasn't a feature from the first game.
Yeah, it never even clicked that might be something that would happen. And in the more recent years, I've only ever played through it on my own. So I would now I want to try this stuff just to see what I can find. And the North Pole is a cool little Easter egg too. I'd actually found this one, but it makes sense too because Santa is always has been in each of the games. The thing with Santa is he's like digging through his bag looking at his presents, and you want to tiptoe up to him because if you can tiptoe up to him without being seen, he will drop a bunch of presents and then fly away because he's got a jetpack. Because why wouldn't Santa have a jetpack? Obviously. Okay, and then here it is. I knew I said something about it. So then I asked what Earthlings are favorites among the team. I love the internet troll. It always cracks me up, which it does. Yep. I'm true to myself.
So Nap responded about the troll was actually a very early fan suggestion that Greg loved. And also another little Easter egg. If you wear the Earthling disguise present and you're a troll, they'll run away from you because they hate social interaction with other Earthlings.
It's so good.
Yep. And then Greg responded, that's fun to hear what your favorite Earthlings are. One of my favorite things in Back in the Groove is something the friendly Earthlings do, where they offer to give you something to help you out. That was a late addition to the game, but I love how it makes the Earthlings feel a little bit more alive. I especially like when they sometimes ask you for a present, and then they may or may not give you something in exchange. If I had to choose one Earthling, I might choose Gandhi. Well, that's not a bad choice. I love that you can walk with him, and he keeps you safe and makes other Earthlings become more loving. Bad Earthlings might conceptually be the Yeti. Bad Earthlings might conceptually be the Yeti with the sharpened pencil, just so random. And mechanics-wise, I like the Geek Brothers and their drone that opens a random present. It creates chaos.
Yeah, it literally does. Sometimes it's just enough to drive you absolutely bonkers when it opens up something you're holding on to, like the total bummer that you don't know you have yet. Mm-hmm. And it kills you. I hate it. All right, then I already touched on this a little bit, but we don't have the responses. So my last question was, if you were able to release a Toejam and Earl game optimized on any video game platform, new or old, which would you pick?
And Nap said, my answer is Ready Aim Tomatoes in VR.
Let's go.
And then Greg said, I think I agree with you both. I used to love the DS and really wanted to make that version. That was disappointing that I never got to. I've always wanted a mobile version too. Probably never going to happen though.
Hey, you never know. Never say never, Greg.
I feel like you have one more question that was related to the cassette.
Oh, yeah, because he mentioned the cassette. Then I was like, well, can I get this somewhere?
Actually, I do want something.
Yeah. Did this actually get released? Yeah. Do you happen to have one I can just have? Yeah, I did. I did ask if that cassette was ever actually sold.
And he said it wasn't officially sold. But a pin and a mobile, like something you put over a baby crib, were sold through Sega Magazine and are incredibly hard to find. You can see the pin and the canceled cassette here. And so, fans, if you want to click on this link that's on my screen, you can see it. Also included the song on our 30th anniversary CD soundtrack with limited run, which I believe I've listened to on the way here.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Look at you getting ready for this.
Yep. Feel the funk from Funkatron.
That pin. I want that pin. In case you didn't pull it up, it's cool.
I pulled it up.
It's very much so a pin that's a product of its time because it's probably got the little pull away thing where you had to clip push the little two things to pull off.
Yeah.
Somebody actually has on eBay a baggie of these. They obviously ended up with a bunch of them.
Oh wow.
And I want to say it's like 15 of them, but they want like $150 for them, which in theory, $10 each isn't that bad, but I don't want 15 of them. I want like 2 max. I would be happy with 1, but I've thought about messaging the guy and seeing if he had any interest in selling.
I mean, if he still has them, he might take it for less.
I'm almost positive they're still on eBay. They've been up there for a long time, so I should still just ask, because my goal is to.
I mean, I'd take 1. I'd take 2.
Oh my gosh!
I wouldn't take 3.
Oh yeah, that would be crazy.
Yeah.
What are you gonna do with 3? Yeah, that's one of my things. Like, I love this series. Like I've said, like when people tend to love a specific anything, video game, movie franchise, books, whatever. Yeah, they like to collect them. Well, collectors do. Not everybody that likes something is a collector, but like a Star Wars fan, a lot of times they end up, going a little deeper into the Star Wars realm than just liking the movies. They end up buying figures or lightsabers or whatever else. Toejam and Earl it's so niche, and it's so beloved by me that like I have this desire to get like all of the different Toejam and Earl items that there are, because until Back in the Groove there weren't that many.
No.
Like Back in the Groove did have quite a few through the Yeti and limited run. Like I wish I would have got one of the skateboard decks, because not because I skateboard, because I would never use it anyway, but it would be a great display item.
Yeah.
Like I definitely have a place I'd put it in my room if I can ever find one, but it never comes up anywhere. Like I have save searches for Toejam Earl stuff on all of the sales sites. And generally speaking, it's the same. It's just the games.
Yeah.
Like I don't see much of the merch. Every once in a while I'll see something. That's how I ended up getting the plushes. I didn't even know they were released. I've not followed the Yeti before. Like I saw the limited run stuff and I bought what I could afford off of there.
Yeah.
But a lot of this stuff is just real hard to come by, but I keep looking, you never know.
It's nice to know that like it seems like fans are holding on to them.
Yeah, which I appreciate. Like that means the majority of the people bought it were fans.
Yep.
And not stinky scalpers. Stinky.
Trolls.
But yeah, overall, man, like I appreciate you coming on here, man. I love this series. I hope that
you do.
Yeah. I don't think anybody doubts that I love Toejam Earl. I just think it's a lot of fun, and I don't know how to like say this, but like wholesome fun too. Like, not that there's anything wrong with something not being wholesome fun too. Like, obviously, I don't even know if I'm making sense anymore. But they're just very feel good games.
It's genuine.
It's genuine. Exactly, genuine's probably a good word for it. The love and attention and everything that went into these games is very real, and you can feel it in the main cast of characters, the supporting cast of characters, the ideas and the presence, the music. Everything is just great. It's a great series. And
we didn't even talk about the Funkopotamus, the great Funkopotamus.
They call him. Wait, no, not the hip hopopotamus.
No, not that.
Oh.
That was
His lyrics are bottomless.
that was a licensing issue.
Yeah, but I do hope that having listened to this episode, maybe we'll get a few new Toejam Earl fans out there. And if anybody ends up buying the game and hasn't played it before, but they want to play online with me, hit me up. I'll definitely play it. I always prefer playing online on PlayStation, but I have it on Switch too, so I'd play on there as well. Yeah, just let me know. I'd love to play through more with people and not just on my own trying to get the rest of the hats that I need, because I want to get the platinum trophy.
We'll get it eventually.
We'll get there. Yeah, so that's about it. I hope everybody enjoyed it. If you have any questions about Toejam and Earl, or I guess anything, it doesn't have to be about that, but specifically about Toejam and Earl, let me know. I'm going to post some pictures on the Instagram and probably on the X too. X going to give it to you. Yeah, but thanks for joining me, man.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you very much for having me. And Mario and Luigi Superstar Saga.
What?
That's my favorite RPG.
Oh, okay. Hey, you did it. I was so confused. I was like, what the heck does that have to do with anything? So out of all the RPGs in the world,
every single one. It's not really a JRPG, but it
close
definitely
enough.
has.
I would consider it a JRPG.
Okay.
I mean,
it's made in Japan.
In that venue.
Maybe.
Or that venue? No.
Milieu.
Whatever. I'm going to stop talking. Apparently, I've talked too much. No, my brain never works. I still have not played Superstar Saga. I have it.
You have it physically?
I have it. I have it on Game Boy Advance, and I have the 3DS remake.
Well, next episode.
My homie Bird Dog, they did a episode where him and his co-host both played it, and
During the episode?
not during. They played
okay.
it before to talk about it during the episode. That's what they do on occasion. They'll play a game they've never played before.
That's cool. It's like a book club.
Yeah, it's a really cool idea. It's fun to hear about some of these games. So far, they haven't played any that I've played.
Okay.
So I'm always learning things. One of these times I want to play, like they recently did Okami, and I wanted to play it as well so I could like have my own viewpoints of the game.
Yeah.
Before, but I still never played Okami. But anyway, that's off topic. But I do need to play that game. It's on my
do.
long
I mean, it's
list.
on Virtual Console too now. Or not Virtual
I'll
Console.
play the
but-
3DS version.
Yeah, you should.
'Cause that's the version I want to play. I think it's cool that they did that.
Yeah.
Re-released it. Anyway, we're getting off topic, I guess. So, once again, thanks everybody for listening. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Let me know what you thought on the Instagram, on Discord. Hey, if you haven't joined the Discord, feel free to join it. There's a link on my Instagram bio. And if you haven't done so already, please is it follow? Is it thumbs up? What is it on like the different streaming services?
It depends.
Whatever it is, wherever you stream it, if
Do
you
the
can
5 stars.
if you can make me look good, make
Review
people
it.
think this is a good podcast, even if it's not. Make them think it's a good podcast and follow it. Then other people can find it and not like it or like it. I don't know what they do.
They like it.
They do?
They love it.
Thanks,
They
Alex.
want some more of it.
Oh, they tried so hard. I don't know what the next verse is. I just
don't
know
either.
it's this country. This is out of my wheelhouse. We are rambling right now. I don't usually ramble this much at the end of an episode. I was a little nervous. All right, guys. Well, thank you very much for listening. And like I said, follow me wherever. And remember to always press X to continue.